All right, we'll go ahead and start. Good morning, I'm Mitch Mitchell, Chair of the San Diego Housing Commission Board of Commissioners. It is currently 9:05 a.m. on June 15th, 2023, and I am going to call this meeting to order, the regular meeting and the special meeting of the San Diego Housing Commission Board. We are meeting in person this morning with commissioners, staff, and members of the public in attendance. We have a quorum with 4 commissioners present, and video of today's meeting is also being streamed live online. The link to watch today's meeting is on the Housing Commission website at www.sdhc.org. Members of the public who wish to provide comments to the board will need to complete a speaker slip here in the boardroom and submit it to our Vice President of Communications, Scott Marshall, who is standing at the side of the boardroom. In a moment, I will be proposing that agenda items 100, 101, 102, and 103 on the regular meeting agenda, and items 105 on the special meeting agenda be placed on the consent agenda for today's meeting. Members of the public may provide comment about the items on the consent agenda by submitting a speaker request form for that item before the board considers the consent agenda. To speak in favor of any item on today's agenda, please submit a gold-colored form. To speak in opposition on any item on today's agenda, please submit a pink-colored form. Those who wish to address the board about a topic that is not on the agenda should fill out a white speaker request form. Members of the public will have 3 minutes each to provide their comments about agenda items or non-agenda public comments. However, if a large number of people wish to provide non-agenda public comments or speak on a single agenda item, comments will be limited to 1 minute each. Collective testimony by those who support or oppose an item shall be limited to no more than 15 minutes total per side. When I call your name, please step to the podium, state your name for the record, and begin making your comments. Now it is time for our non-agenda public comments for both our regular meeting and special agenda meetings. And I believe I have one speaker slip for the non-agenda public comment, Joy Sunyata, District 3. Good morning, Joy.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Joy Sunyata, District 3. First of all, I will be speaking a couple times today. Cut me some slack because I'm still recovering from that 10-hour meeting on Tuesday at City Hall.
Has it ended?
I don't think so. I didn't sleep well that night, and I'm still not quite fully here, so I did my best. But anyway, I did want to come forward and tell you something that has come forward because of that meeting. I have been reading everything in the UT, and I can't remember the name of the gentleman. I never pronounce it right, but he has a column. And yesterday he talked about the housing issue and all related matters, but what really struck me is the word collaboration. And I've spoken about collaboration often in the last 5 years. And so I went back to the archives and looked at the Harvard Business Review they had a wonderful article a batch of years ago on the art of collaboration. And I was really amazed back then. It is an art form, and it's extremely complicated and very hard to implement and to really live in an organization, but still we must try. And so that's where I want us to go. And I want to just quote one sentence from that article. They were talking about the Houston, Texas, the big success story there on the homeless, but many of those components do not fit for us. But in any case, it's a big success story. So here's what he says, I quote, "All agencies, more than 100 of them, are required to work collaboratively on a required set of goals and to share a centralized database." I really love that. And so that's all I wanted to really focus on this morning, is that I'm going to be speaking more on that. And as I said, it's very complicated. It's not easy to implement, but I want all of us to work on all levels, including myself, to collaboratively work better with everyone. And I think that's going to be one of the keys to make this thing happen regarding our housing issue. So thank you for listening, and love all that you do, and love to all.
Thank you very much, Joy. We do not have any further public comments, speaker slips for the non-agenda public comments. So now, commissioners, I will ask if you would like to make any comments, and then after that, I will make a couple of announcements for this morning. So are there any commissioner comments? Yes. Vice Chair Klungner.
Thank you. I want to welcome our new commissioner, who we've only met via Zoom, but pleasure to have you here, and you're playing a very important role as one of the resident members, and we've had a shortage on that front. So I just wanted to say publicly, it's great to have you with us. I'm going to start using my commissioner comment to ask 3 questions of staff. I gave staff a heads up each month. And the first one is, if Lisa, would you mind? For the past month, how many referrals to shelter were successfully placed in shelter as a percentage?
I mean, if a heads up counts like 5 minutes ago, you did a great job. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. But I have my Tuesday binder, so.
Lisa, have you been home yet? I think the meeting's still going on. So can you please?
So to be serious about what is a very challenging condition in regards to access to shelter, for the month of June through June 11th, there were 436 referrals, 154 complete, and 282 incomplete. To give context on what a whole month would look like, May there were 1,589 referrals, 1,141 incomplete. So about a 30% completion rate is the about average that we see. It's important to note that these are not deduplicated, so some folks may have attempted to get into shelter multiple times. So these are just raw numbers.
Thank you for all the context. I knew that you would have not only the basic answer, but the context that is important as well. So just in simplest terms, 2/3 of attempts to enter a shelter result in we don't have the space and they're turned away.
Right. We either don't have a top bunk, or we don't have mobility aids, or we don't have a female bunk, whatever.
On an average day, how many beds are available in the morning?
Under 50, anywhere between about 15 to 45 is the average. Our occupancy rate has been running around 97%.
And roughly what time of day on most days are those beds full by?
Between 10 and 11.
Okay. So I'm just going to, thank you, that was all I had. I'm going to ask that every month. I just want to recognize how many people are seeking shelter that we are not providing. So.
Thank you, Vice Chair Klempner. I'm going to make my comments because I think Vice Chair Klempner and I are channeling the same thing these days in particular. And those questions that he just asked are so important because facts matter. I think we all agree facts matter. I have witnessed misinformation around this topic, the situation about how many shelters and how much bed. Please don't, because you're going to make me. And I get angry. It's hard driving down the street and seeing people suffering, but it's harder witnessing people make disingenuous statements. It's harder watching people try and divide this community around this such important topic. This is a crisis. And no one single person has ever solved a crisis. It takes a collective thought. It takes a group of people. And I think that right now what we need is collaboration. And we need people to be constructive about how we solve the problem. It's going to take a portfolio approach. There's no one single silver bullet. There's not one single ordinance. And what I've witnessed over the last month, and in particular the last 2 weeks, is by people who've chosen to use social media in particular to throw jabs and to create divisiveness. It's cowardice. It's destructive, and it's a distraction. In 2008, when we had the financial crisis, the whole community knew that we had to group together to feed people. People were losing their homes, and we all came together and made it about how we helped one another. Right now, in 2023, it's about sheltering people, and it's about the people that are on the sidewalks, that are on the parks, that are along the riverbeds. It's about the people who are living in their cars. It's about the people who are 1 week or 1 minute away from being evicted. And it's important that I say this, that people aren't pawns in politics or policy. These are people who are looking for one simple solution. They want to be sheltered just like anybody else. They don't want to be subject to the elements. And our crisis, as Vice Chair Klumner just highlighted, is we don't have enough space for everybody. But that doesn't mean we have to give up. And that doesn't mean we should be destructive in talking about when talking about potential solutions. I will always remind the Housing Commission team and the staff here, but I want to say this first to my fellow commissioners. We all volunteer to do this, and I appreciate each and every one of you, because there are better things that you could be doing with your time, but you don't. And we get the information and we read it and we try and absorb what's happening, and we try and figure out how can we best help. And to the staff, many of you talk to me regularly. I so appreciate you. I so appreciate what you're trying to do every day. And you have to listen to the same destructive comments. And you have to watch the same divisive actions. And, what really bothered me the last couple of weeks is comments from people who are saying that everybody that's on the streets has a drug or alcohol problem. It's ridiculous. We live in a high cost of living community where people are being forced to the streets because of a $100 rent increase, where people are being forced into their cars. They didn't do anything wrong. And so for people to say that everybody needs to go through a test before we give them shelter is absolutely ridiculous. And they should be ashamed of themselves. We're all in this together. And I think it's important that we remember that there's nothing more important right now than this board, the staff, the team that works on this every day, and that has since the beginning of this crisis, and the civic leaders and civic voices that are all trying to lean in and help. They all remember that we have to ignore the negative and focus on the positive. And that positive is that we will, at some point soon, be able to build that portfolio that meets the needs of the people who need us most now. Stay focused, be driven, and we will get through this together, because this is really about us, about we. And to the other 17 cities in the region, this is about we, the collective we. It's not just the city of San Diego. And we will prevail, but the key word is we. And so for those who don't want to be a part of the we, so be it. But please stop using people who are struggling as pawns. Have some sympathy and some empathy. That's all I ask. And with that, I don't have any further comments.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to the agenda. I have two announcements this morning. Commissioner Stephanie Benvenuto has resigned from the Housing Commission Board. We will ask her back at an upcoming meeting to recognize her for her service on the board. And I will just say this morning that Stephanie will be missed. She and I have spent a number of moments and minutes and hours talking about the Housing Commission and the job ahead and the great job that the team and the staff does every day. She distinguished herself as a board member for more than 6 years, including 3 as chair. We will miss her, but I know she will be doing great things, and we wish her the best. As one commissioner departs, we also have the privilege of welcoming a new commissioner today. This is the first meeting for Commissioner Tony Jackson. It's a pleasure to see him in person, and we met via video due to that pandemic, but it is a pleasure to see you here this morning. On May 23rd, the City Council approved his appointment to the board. Commissioner Jackson is a U.S. Navy veteran and a Housing Commission rental assistance participant. He works as a business development and inside sales manager for a company that provides realistic training and exercises for military, law enforcement, and first responders. Welcome, Commissioner Jackson, to your first meeting of the San Diego Housing Commission Board. We look forward to working with you. Next, we will move on to the report from our interim president and CEO, Mr. Jeff Davis. Jeff, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, Commissioners. And first, I think I want to start by saying, I've been at the Housing Commission for 27 years, and I've seen a lot in my time, and we are very fortunate at this point in time to have such a board that we have right now, to a person. Each of these people truly care about the community, care about people, particularly those in need. So we should really recognize how fortunate we are right now to have such caring people on our board. So the first thing I wanted to share with you is our San Diego Renter Survey. In February, the Housing Commission began an analysis of evictions in the city of San Diego. We're consulting with HRNA on this project. HRNA is a public policy firm with more than 40 years of experience in real estate and economic development. This study is to help identify the landscape and trends related to evictions. The study will inform recommendations and policies regarding evictions and housing stability. As part of this study, we will soon be launching a survey of renters throughout the city of San Diego. This survey will enhance our understanding of the challenges that San Diego renters experience and the factors that contribute to housing instability for many of them. Survey responses will be completely anonymous and will not affect residents' ability to access services or housing support in any way. In addition to the survey itself, we are creating a flyer, suggested social media posts, and other material to help raise awareness of the survey. We'll be sharing these materials with community organizations, the offices of local elected officials, and additional stakeholders to ask them to encourage San Diego renters to participate by completing the survey. We look forward to hearing directly from renters through their survey responses about their experiences renting in the high-cost, low-vacancy rental market in San Diego. The study is anticipated to conclude in October, and I will be providing additional updates to this board as we learn more through the process. Last week, the Housing Commission announced its new first-time homebuyer program for middle-income Black, Indigenous people of color, or BIPOC households. Vice Chair Klumpner represented the Housing Commission at the news conference with City Council President Pro Tem Monica Montgomery Stepp, City Council Member Vivian Moreno, and County Supervisor Joel Anderson. This new pilot program offers two options for assistance for qualifying households. Eligible families can receive a total of $40,000 in assistance, which consists of a $20,000 deferred down payment assistance loan and a $20,000 grant towards closing costs. Or the second option is a total of $20,000 in assistance in the form of a grant toward the down payment and closing costs. The pilot program will assist households earning up to 150% of San Diego's area median income, which is currently $175,000 per year for a family of four. Funding for this program consists of grants from the Wells Fargo Foundation's Wealth Opportunities Realized through Home Ownership, or WORTH, initiative and the National Fair Housing Alliance. Families interested in applying for this program should contact a loan officer from the list of participating lenders that is available on our website at www.sdhc.org/homebuyer. And program details are also available on our website. At the San Diego Housing Federation's Ruby Awards this evening, our Vice President of Preservation, Wendy DeWitt, will be honored with the John Craven Memorial Public Service Award. This is a well-deserved recognition for Wendy, who has been with the Housing Commission for more than 30 years. Wendy's experience, skill, dedication, and professionalism have produced results that have made a positive impact for low-income families in the city throughout her distinguished career. Her ongoing public service continues to benefit San Diego residents. Currently, Wendy leads our efforts to preserve existing affordable rental housing, including naturally occurring affordable housing in the city. Over the years, she has also held a variety of positions, leading and working in areas such as policy, multifamily housing finance, and our nonprofit affiliate, Housing Development Partners. So please join me in congratulating Wendy. A few affordable rental housing developments for which the Housing Commission provided essential financing are also nominated for Ruby Awards. They are the Orchard at Hilltop, Grant Heights 2, and the adjacent Mid-City Family and Harris Family Senior Residence programs, or developments, I should say. We'll learn tonight if those projects receive awards, and we'll follow up to share that with you. And lastly, and sadly, our Vice President of Property Management and Maintenance, Jennifer McKinney, will be leaving the Housing Commission near the end of this month. Jennifer has been with the Housing Commission for 10 years. In that time, she has excelled while overseeing our complex portfolio of affordable rental housing properties. Jennifer is going to be returning to the private sector to work for a developer. Jennifer has been a great leader, a great coworker, an expert in her field, and she just is a fun person to work with, and we will definitely miss her and wish her all the best in her new position. And that concludes my report this morning.
Thank you, Jeff, and I want to echo the congratulations to Mrs. DeWitt. I mean, well-deserved award, and I know that it will be a wonderful evening of celebration tonight. So, all right, we will next move to the approval of the minutes for the regular meeting and the special meeting of May 12th, 2023. If there are any speaker slips that have been submitted, I don't think we have any. No speaker slips have been submitted regarding the minutes. Do any of the commissioners have any changes to the minutes, or do we have a motion? Motion by Vice Chair Klumpner.
I will second.
Second by Commissioner Vasquez. So the minutes of the regular meeting and special meeting, we have a motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, the motion passes unanimously. We'll now move to the consent agenda. As I start, at the start of today's meeting, I was proposing the following items for the consent agenda today. For the regular meeting agenda, items 100, the procurement of general liability insurance coverage. Item 101, the lease at Hotel Stanford for the Associated Barber College of San Diego. Item 102, the fiscal year 2024 Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher Administrative Plan. And item 103, the execution of a memorandum of understanding between the Housing Commission and the city for the administration of the city's homeless services programs. For item 103, I will note one correction for the record. The staff recommended action should say the recommendation is for a 3 one-year options to renew the MOU. 3 one-year options. In addition, from the special meeting agenda, the consent agenda will include item 105, the appointment of Vice Chair Ryan Klumpner to serve on the Board of Directors for the Housing Commission's nonprofit affiliate, Housing Development Partners. I have noticed that we do have a couple of speaker slips that have been submitted for item 102 and for item 103. So I will call them up. Joyce and Yada, your item 102.
Okay. Is this proper?
That is
with
proper.
With the consent?
This is, yes.
Okay, it's first time for me on that. All right, so Joyce and Yada, District 3. I'm going to just sort of ramble a little bit. I looked at the backup and really wasn't able to organize it well for you. First of all, let me send out love to Azazina. She is absolutely spectacular. I have worked with her in the past. I just love her to pieces. She is so professional and absolutely just off the charts beautiful. So under the executive summary, page 2, Housing Commission Strategies Plan, priority number 1, increasing and preserving housing solutions. To be honest with you, I have a feeling, and I celebrate, I will be getting in touch with Wendy. That's a great award. But I feel like our preservation plan has been lost in the shuffle somehow. And even though I see that we're working in some areas on preservation, I was glad that Councilmember Whitburn, in his modification memo, put a spotlight back on that preservation plan, and I really support him in that. So I don't know what's happening with preservation, but I just don't feel like we're working on it like we need to, and that would really be great. Chapter 1E in that same area, just quickly, fair housing policy. Please handle that with kid gloves. It hasn't worked in the past, way past. And then F, which is equity and exclusivity. Handle that with kid gloves, please. And you all know why on that, equity and exclusivity. So, and I love the landlord outreach. I think the whole idea is fabulous. I just am so glad that it's working. I understand it's working well, and I think that's a great thing for us to be doing. On the conflict of interest, and this is my last one real quick, the thing I didn't understand was the thing that they pointed out was except an appointed resident commissioner, which would be Antoine in this case. But I didn't understand that there was an exception to the conflict of interest for that position. So, and then I went to the onboarding manual. I didn't have time, and I couldn't find the conflict of interest section so I could understand it better. So I think I might have ran over. Thank you for being patient if I did. Again, love all of you so much. It's tough work, isn't it? And I appreciate you're willing to do it. Love to all.
Thank you, Joy. Joy, don't sit down because I think I'm going to call your name again. All right, there are no further comments on item 102. Now we'll move to item 103 on the consent agenda. Joy, the floor is yours.
Okay, Joy Sunyata, District 3. Now we got to stop. We did Wendy, now we're going to do Lisa. Lisa Jones, we go way back. And I just, I don't want to have my tears, but I just think she's so fabulous. Did you see her in action when she was grilled on Tuesday? She was just so wonderful. So I just think we're just so blessed to have her. So let's see, a 13-year anniversary. On July 1st, 23, congratulations and thank you on the administering of the homelessness services programs. I was confused. There seemed to be some replication in the writings. I was looking at the executive summary, I believe, but I'm not sure on that. The master MOU draft, do we have a draft coming? Has a draft come forward already and it's done and we're voting on it now? So I didn't get that at all, and I want to get that because I want to look at what a master plan is for 5 programs. I feel a little uncomfortable with that if an MOU could really cover those programs. But anyway, I wish you could help me. I'll work on that later, but so we will see, I'll just read this to you. I'm going to duplicate it. When will we see the draft? Can the public see it? And is this, I'm talking about the MOU, and is this board approving the master MOU with this agenda item? So that's it. And this is big stuff. And again, I'm pleased to address it as best I can, and I rely on you to really do the hard work to make it happen. Thank you. Love to all.
Thank you, Joy. It's always a pleasure to see you. All right, that concludes the public comment period for the items that are on the consent agenda. Commissioners, do you have any comments on the consent agenda, or do we have a motion?
One quick comment. I actually did want to address the question that Joy brought up, which is I believe that our MOU is essentially consolidating multiple MOUs that already exist.
That is correct.
Just for anybody else in the public wondering about this, Lisa, yeah.
Yes, so there are 5 separate MOUs right now. It's being consolidated all into a single MOU. And to your question about programs, rather than listing each individual program that the city contracts with us to administer, it lists program types: shelter, crisis response, outreach, system navigation, rapid rehousing, prevention. So it talks about the types of programs and interventions rather than the individuals. And the reason that matters is that means that during the year, as new funding comes forward at the city, they can administratively add in new programs and move them over to us to administer without having to go back and amend the MOU every time. So it gives flexibility, and the MOU also does a great job of clarifying roles. So it's administratively much more efficient. We're really happy with where this ended up. With a lot of collaboration between the city HSSD team and our team.
Thank you, and I know that we do consent for things that are, routine, but I do appreciate when the public is paying attention to these things and has questions, because that means that maybe we should pause and, address it. The last thing on the consent that I wanted to note was on our moving to work plan. I hope we all are kind of reviewing these things and getting briefings, but we are making an important change there with respect to how we handle clients who have a history of a cannabis conviction in their past and increasing their access to housing. So that's important change, yeah.
Thank you, Vice Chair Klempner, and I will echo your statement on that is an important change. Too often we overlook the little things, and that is a little thing that will make a big difference, and especially in the state of California where it has been legalized. All right, no further comments. I will entertain a motion and a second for the consent agenda.
So
Moved by Commissioner, Vice Chair, and second by Commissioner Vasquez. All right, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, the motion carries unanimously on a vote of 4-0. The next item on the agenda is item 104, and this is the execution of a memorandum of understanding between the Housing Commission and the City of San Diego for the administration of the city's eviction notice registry. We will take public comments after the staff presentation. Suswena, you've already been praised once or twice this morning, so it's good to see you sitting there at the table. She's the Executive Vice President of Rental Assistance and Workforce Development. You will present this item, and we are ready when you are.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. The item before you this morning is a request to authorize a memorandum of understanding with the City of San Diego to enable the Housing Commission to fulfill its responsibilities under the city's recently enacted Tenant Protection Ordinance. The City Council adopted the Tenant Protection Ordinance on May 16th, and Mayor Todd Gloria signed it on May 25th. The ordinance takes effect on June 24th. The City of San Diego is responsible for oversight of the ordinance, including enforcement, policy development, and communication and outreach about the ordinance. Provisions of the ordinance specify the Housing Commission's responsibilities. These include collecting and maintaining landlord eviction notices. The ordinance requires landlords to inform the Housing Commission within 3 business days of issuing a termination notice to the tenant. This requirement to notify the Housing Commission does not take effect until 30 days after the Housing Commission creates a portal to receive submissions and informs the public that the portal has been created. The Housing Commission is also required to provide reports to the City of San Diego and to create a tenant protection guide. The Housing Commission began preliminary work related to these responsibilities pending the allocation of funding from the city for these items. This included contacting other cities in California that have eviction notice portals to learn about their practices and determining the requirements for a San Diego portal. We have also started to create an initial tenant protection guide, which is subject to review and approval by the City Attorney's Office. We anticipate completing this initial guide this summer. We will also be developing a more detailed guide in the coming months to provide as an update to landlords and tenants. On Monday of this week, the City Council approved the city's fiscal year 2024 budget, including $500,000 for first-year expenses for the Housing Commission's responsibilities under the terms of the Tenant Protection Ordinance. In addition to the approved funding, a Memorandum of Understanding, or MOU, between the Housing Commission and the city is necessary for the Housing Commission to perform its responsibilities under the ordinance. If the proposed MOU is approved, when it is executed, the Housing Commission will hire 2 staff specifically for this initiative. These staff will assist with the development and implementation of the online portal that will be known as the City of San Diego Eviction Notice Registry, program procedures, a program website, a more comprehensive tenant protection guide, and ongoing program administration. After the execution of the MOU, the Housing Commission will complete the request for proposals process and procure a contractor to acquire or create the online portal. If the board approves the action before you today, we anticipate requesting Housing Authority and City Council approval of the MOU next month. Based on our current time estimates for procurement processes and portal development, we anticipate beginning to collect landlord submissions about eviction notices by July 2024. The city's tenant protection ordinance does not specify the types of information the Housing Commission should collect for the eviction notice registry. When the portal has been developed, the Housing Commission will gather information from landlords, such as what is shown on this slide, that is necessary for the notification requirements of the ordinance. We will not require additional information. However, we will ask landlords and tenants to voluntarily provide more details. This will be entirely voluntary and will have no impact on any other aspect of the Housing Commission's responsibilities under the ordinance or any other Housing Commission program. The additional voluntary information will help inform policies and practices related to the registry. Examples of the types of additional information we would request are shown on the bottom of this slide. After the portal is created, landlords will be able to access only the eviction-related information they have submitted. For privacy reasons, landlords will not be able to access information that other landlords have provided. Tenants, attorneys, eviction court, and members of the public will also not have access to the information in the portal. This is also to protect the privacy of the people the information relates to. The Housing Commission will aggregate data about eviction notices from the portal and results from the voluntary tenant and landlord surveys to provide reports to the City of San Diego. To assist with general questions about the eviction notice registry, the Housing Commission will establish a dedicated phone line for customer service. Those with landlord-tenant disputes, mediation requests, or client or compliance and legal-related questions will be referred to community-based legal assistance organizations. We will also develop a website about the registry as well as a tenant protection guide as the ordinance requires. Today, staff is requesting that the Housing Commission Board recommend that the Housing Authority and City Council take the actions shown on the following slides. This concludes my presentation, and I am available for any questions you may have.
Thank you, Asusana. We have one speaker slip that has been submitted for public comment, and we will call up Asana Abdi.
Good morning, Housing Commission Chair, Vice Chair, and Commissioners. My name is Asma Abdi. I'm a Policy Associate with PANA, Partnership for the Advancement of New Americans. We are a local research, community organizing, and policy hub dedicated to advancing the full economic, social, and civic inclusion of refugees in the region. We are really appreciative that the City Council and Housing Commission are executing a memorandum of understanding today to begin the process of the eviction notice registry. Families are being displaced in San Diego, and we all know too well the ever-increasing numbers of unhoused people living here. Eviction data will help the city, you all, and nonprofit organizations better understand displacement caused by eviction in our communities. We know that developing this portal is a process that will take time. However, this data is critical and sorely lacking. Waiting 12 to 18 months or longer just to begin collecting data on evictions in our city allows more families to be evicted unfairly without oversight. We are hopeful that you can find an interim, simple means for early data collection similar to Chula Vista and other cities, concurrent to the more lengthy development of the portal and analysis tools. As one of the lead organizations in the Tenant Protections Coalition that included over 42 organizations, we are kindly requesting a meeting with you in order to provide input on the data collection needs of our communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. We don't have any other speaker slips for this item. We will now move to commissioner comments. Item 104. Vice Chair Klempner.
Thank you. I know that we're standing something up from scratch here. This MOU, the other MOUs, I think fall into the category of collaboration, making sure that we have things that require interagency work running smoothly, and that we have the flexibility that we need to be nimble. Regarding the public comment, is there any short-term potential way that we could stand something up faster? I think it is important that we do this right, and I know that we have procurement rules to follow, but it does make sense in our current circumstances, that, and I know that you're all working as fast as you can, but I just wanted to sort of ask if there is some simpler option here.
Yes, so we have intentionally met with other jurisdictions throughout the state of California to learn about their portals and also inquire like what services that they use or software companies. So if there is a way for us to acquire a portal that already exists, that would shorten up the time frame for us to stand something up. So that is something that we're writing into our RFP, to either acquire something that's already existing that we can just replicate versus building something from scratch.
Thank you. That sounds like an option worth exploring. I also want to kind of manage expectations on this for the public, and I think this is a very important undertaking here. But if a landlord does not comply with the ordinance and does not report, do we have any enforcement mechanism? The Housing Commission.
The Housing Commission is not responsible for any enforcement activities, neither with the submission of the ordinances or with any misfaults with the ordinance itself. We are planning to continue our partnerships with local community-based landlord-tenant mediation services, and we would be referring outwards for resolution to any mediation requests.
And I just want to put a fine point on the language there when, that's not our responsibility. We don't have, and maybe this is a legal question too, we don't have the authority to take any sort of action against a landlord that doesn't comply. We are relying on those who do have that authority. If I am worried about compliance with this ordinance, but I also recognize that there are limits to our purview and authority here. So, yeah.
Let me talk about the legal part just for a second. It's a City of San Diego ordinance, and the city attorney has jurisdiction over enforcing those ordinances unless it's specifically delegated to another entity, and this may be a non-delegable duty. So I think that's the short answer.
Jeff, you look like you might want to add something.
Well, first of all, I appreciate that you making that distinction, that it's not just that we don't have the responsibility, it's simply that we don't have the authority or any kind of enforcement power. I also want to just address one of the comments from the panel representative about data, the desires of the community for data. The ordinance itself lays out what data we can require, and we will require all those elements of data. Anything beyond that is beyond the ordinance and something that we could not require without being in breach of legalities. We will ask for additional data, but it is the ordinance itself that tells us what data we can require.
I appreciate that distinction too. Again, just as we're sort of trying to be collaborative here, we need to think about what we may ask on a voluntary basis, what is required, what exactly our ability is to require landlords to provide this information. And I want to sort of point this all out on the front end because this is important information to gather. I think this is going to be very valuable. I think we should get everything that we can. We have very little information about evictions right now. Anything new will provide some sort of insight, even if it is a starting point for we need to be asking additional questions and we need to think about ways to enforce, even if the result here is that, and I think this is something that we should look at, potentially there's a mismatch between the eviction data that is running through the court system in terms of how many legal actions are taken versus what is being reported to us. Showing kind of a failure in the collection of the data, even that would be valuable to us a year or two from now in terms of being able to identify what information we're not getting. I think this is all kind of about taking steps in the right direction in terms of understanding how this is working. So I appreciate the update. I'm happy to make the motion here, and I just want our community partners, the city, and all of us to kind of be aware of what the potential and the potential limitations are here so that we can take sensible next steps as this goes into effect.
Thank you, Vice Chair Klempner. Any further? Commissioner Vasquez.
Speak. Sorry. Still getting used to the live meetings. In the explanation, it appears that the reason why we're collecting the data or the requirement that a landlord submit a three-day notice to quit is because we want to make sure that it's occurring, that people are getting this proper notification. I'm just trying to understand the policy behind why it is that we want to make sure that they're submitting the 3-day notice to quit.
I think that is partially the reason, is adding in one more step to hold landlords accountable to fulfilling the new tenant protections that were included in the amendment of the tenant protection ordinance. But I also think it's a mechanism, to Mr. Klumpner's point, is to gather data about whether or not the ordinance is being followed, the eviction termination notices issued to the tenants are being submitted as the ordinance details, and then really doing a comparison against what the eviction courts are seeing versus what's happening in the landlord community.
I think the only feedback that I would give is that it's really, in my experience, and it's anecdotal at best, but my experience is it's the 30-day and the 60-day notice that typically doesn't get given, and then once that expires, then you do the 3-day notice to quit that they need to leave. So it's interesting that we're just collecting the 3-day notice and not the initial either 30-day or 60-day.
So there's different requirements for at-fault and no-fault just cause terminations. So anytime there is a notice to a tenant to terminate the tenancy, whether it's at-fault or no-fault, that is when the landlord has to issue a specific notice to the tenant, and then subsequently within 3 days notify the Housing Commission that they have issued a notice to the tenant. So it's a confirmation that they've followed the ordinance with the termination clauses.
Okay. And so then this requirement would only be for landlords that have or that are lending or that are leasing to affordable housing units like Section 8 or subsidized housing then.
The ordinance is for any tenancy in the city of San Diego. There is an exclusion for deed restricted affordable housing that is exempt. It does include Section 8 tenants, so the ordinance would include
everybody.
Yeah.
Well, I know the ordinance includes everybody. I guess what I'm asking is regarding the 3-day notice to quit, and when we're looking at because the legislation reads that it's specifically, well, it seems to be trying to address the issue of no fault evictions when people are displaced out of no fault of their own, and then recognizing that they need to follow the 3 days. So I think you've sufficiently answered the question, that we're just trying to make sure that happens. Because, side note, I volunteer at the Legal Aid Society, and so we will see that happen often, that people landlords know how to collect money but don't necessarily know about noticing. So then the other question the only other comment I think that I would make is that I think it's to what Commissioner Klumpner's comment was, that we could collect some of this data. Not us, the San Diego Housing Commission, but we can compare it against the unlawful detainers, and maybe even partner with the organizations, the nonprofit organizations that we already have a relationship with, to see if they can collect the data as well. Because what I will say is that when it comes to receiving a 3-day notice, just because you get it's cumbersome to collect the data from the court system, right? So, and see trends. So that's something that maybe can also happen. That's it.
Well, thank you, Commissioner Vasquez. Okay. Swin, I have a few comments and questions that I think you'll be able to answer. I want to go back to what Commissioner Vasquez just asked about the 3-day quit. Look, and Vice Chair Klumpner mentioned this as well. I think the data is going to be really important because we talked about this the last meeting, is knowing more about what's happening and the spaces that it's happening. Jeff, we talked about, if someone gets a 3-day notice to quit and they're because, the rent's going up $200 and they've already said I can't pay that, and all of that data will help us be more focused on creating solutions. I would assume that that the prevention efforts that we've talked about, there's a lot of conversations about creating a fund where if someone says, look, my rent's going up $100, I've been told I have to get out because I can't afford it, that they can then, that can be withdrawn because there's a commitment, yes, you're going to have the money to pay it. What Commissioner Vasquez was asking was important, and maybe I missed this. The requirements of the ordinance say you're going to be given notice at 3 different points, correct?
So the notice would, for at-fault termination is
Yes.
after you've been given an opportunity to cure the deficiency of the
Yes.
tenant. If you don't cure it, then the landlord would proceed with issuing the 3-day notice and then issuing a formal termination notice.
Yes.
3 days after that, the landlord is supposed to inform the Housing Commission that they've issued the notice to terminate.
Okay.
For no-fault terminations, there's also clauses in there that would trigger relocation benefits to the households. So it varies between the household type. So it could be 2 months. However, if the household's elderly disabled, it can be up to 3 months. When there is a no-fault termination, I believe it's a 30 to 60-day advance notice that has to be issued to the tenants before. So it's well before any 3-day notice would be evicted. So there is still some time. I do agree that obtaining information would be vital to inform future policy. However, the ordinance wasn't written in the way to mandate the collection of that data. However, the Housing Commission has built in a process where we would send out the surveys to both the landlords and the tenants to ask for voluntarily providing that information to help inform future policies and decisions and analysis.
Okay. Yes.
And if I'm wrong, tell me, but I just want to make sure. I think there might be some miscommunication here in the idea that we are accepting 3-day notices to pay or quit. It's really we're getting them within 3 days. So all of these notices that are going to result in a potential termination must be provided within 3 days. Maybe I misunderstood, but I thought there might be some miscommunication there.
No, Jeff, you are correct. The Housing Commission will remain separate and apart from the landlord's noticing of the tenant to end the termination. We will not receive a copy of that termination notice, and we are not involved in that process. We are only receiving an alert or a notification that the landlord has issued the tenant a notice separate and apart from the Housing Commission.
That is our hope. That if the landlord gives
Yeah.
writing notice, we will then get a notice that 3-day notice has been provided. That's our hope.
Correct.
Okay.
Unless the landlord fails to comply,
Yes.
in which case,
We get notice.
if I understand, the only party that has any sort of enforcement authority here is the city attorney. Is that correct?
That is correct. And
Okay.
as of today, there has not been an enforcement agency that's been identified. So tenants would have to take up enforcement issues in a court of law.
Yeah, this is going to be complicated because, it's the effort to educate all the landlords that exist is a large uphill journey. And so I would say that I'm thrilled that we're moving in this direction. There are a few things that I think we're going to have to do really well. The education, the initial education and understanding of this by every type of landlord is going to be really important because, as Vice Chair Clemner just said, I can already hear it now. Well, I didn't know about that. Nobody told me that. 3 days. I just said, look, they didn't pay. You got to get out. So I just think we're going to have to figure out how to. We're going to have to do this better than we've ever done it. And I know we're capable of it because when we were doing the, yes, you remember that when we were handing out the money yep, we redefined it and we were a shining example. So I suspect that we will come up with something, but this is going to be really important because there are a lot of landlords who will claim to not have heard about this, and we can't just put it up on a website, and we can't just talk about it once in a newspaper article, or we've failed. So we just have to figure that out. We should definitely talk about how we do that. The second thing is, were you going to say something?
May I?
Yeah, go ahead.
This is not altogether different than the Section 8 source of income ordinance that was passed, I don't know, was it 3 or 4 years ago? And that too has no enforcement agency. But I will say that we have seen a good deal of success despite that. The apartment associations have all been very helpful in making sure that their owners are aware of the ordinance, and what we see are people recognizing they can no longer hold Section 8 income as something that they do not count, something that they do not consider. And so while there was no enforcement agency, we are seeing a good deal of improvement from what we saw before. So we will make sure that we do all our part to make sure that the word is out there, and we suspect that it will result in at least a significant improvement.
Okay, it's good to hear. I would say that as we've talked about using the Navigation Center more aggressively to collect data, that's important that the Navigation Center be armed and equipped to have this conversation, to provide people with this information when they come in. I also would say that there's a more vulnerable element, or there's a more vulnerable group of our population. The service sector in particular, so I hope that we will go out and find partnerships, communication partnerships. I know that when we were handling the federal assistance, rental assistance money, one of the first people I called was Bridget Browning, who represents all the hotel workers, the landscapers, the maids, the garden, the cooks, and I think that worked because she was talking directly to the people who, in many instances, didn't have computer access and had to handwrite their applications for support for things. But I think we have to find partnerships like that to make sure that we are truly getting the message out to the tenants that may be at risk, because a lot of them won't know, but if they at least have an idea about it, they will know that they have a place to go for help. So again, I just want to make sure we define that. And then the last thing I would say is the no enforcement element, and you heard this from Vice Chair Klempner and from Commissioner Vasquez, is really, I think, is important. After we have collected enough data for, after about 6 months, I think it's important that we take a look at what's working, what's not, what's happening, and go back to the City Council and make some suggestions. I think this is one of those things we have to make as a commitment, that we want to go back to the Housing Authority and say, this is what we're seeing thus far, and here's where we probably need to make some corrections and changes. And so I think that's the beauty of this, is we're just getting started. But I do think this will have to be improved in order for this to be effective. So thank you for your presentation today. And as always, great job. So,
Thank you.
all right, are there any further comments? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion.
I move to recommend item 104, HRC 23-073.
Okay. We have a motion by Commissioner Vasquez.
Second.
Well, we have a second by our newest commissioner, Commissioner Jackson. All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, the motion carries 4-0. And with that concludes the board's regular and special meetings today. I have to say that I'm so used to seeing Casey Snell up here. I feel a little off kilter because she's not up here. She hasn't been at the table today. So this concludes the board's regular and special meetings of the day. And with no further comments, we are adjourned at 10:02 a.m. Thank you very much for being a part of our discussion today.